Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer. You know, I gotta tell you something. I really hate it when those people, they come to your door and they tell you you've got to be saved or you're gonna burn. Stupid firefighters. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna go ahead and take a look at Mosaic, a story of civilization from Forbidden Games.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
In Mosaic, a story of civilization from Forbidden Games. 1 to 6 players take on the roles of various civilizations as they start out in antiquity and build up their resources, their population, in an attempt to become the greatest civilization of them all. Now, this is a big game. There's a lot going on here. I'm just going to touch on some of the basics and then I'll tell you what I think. At the beginning of the game, each player takes a civilization, and it doesn't really matter where on the board you're sitting. You can take whatever civilization. You get certain traits and certain ideas about what your civilization is, and you're going to take a number of population figures to represent your population there. You're also going to have some military figures as well. You're going to populate the board with various tokens. Now, these are face down, so you don't know what tokens are where. Now, you're also going to have a number of cards around the deck. You're going to have technology cards, tax and tariff cards, population cards, and building cards. Now, mixed into some of these card decks, you're also going to have scoring cards that are going to be, you can arrange the deck so they'll come out, at certain points in the game. Now, you're going to have also a number of kind of achievements that you can gain and other things you can get as the game goes on. Now, you're going to have some various currencies. You're going to have gold, which will be a currency that you can use to kind of buy things to supplement your resources, but you're going to have very specific resources in the game. You're going to have stone, you're going to have ideas, and you're going to have food. Now, you're also going to have tracks that represent these ideas on your player board. You'll have your population up top, and these various track numbers beneath you, and as you kind of gain resources, you're going to move those tracks up so that you'll be able to gain even more. Now, you're going to start off by putting cities on the board. You'll put these various cities, starting cities on the board. As the game progresses, you'll be adding more cities, more military units, and other things. Now, on your turn, there are 8 actions that you can do. First of all, you can work. And how working occurs is you add the number of resources along a specific track. Again, stone, food, ideas. And you add that to the number of population you currently have. And then you take that number of idea tokens or whatever from that. Now, you can also increase your population. There are a couple of population cards face up at any time, and they can tell you kind of how much food you have to spend in order to actually get another figure for the population there on the board, and that increases your population, which makes work more productive as the game goes forward. You can take the build action. Essentially, you select, there are 5 build cards. You go ahead, you select one, you pay whatever its price is, and that will let you build either another city or a port or some other feature on the board that's going to benefit you in the long term. Now, in the build card deck, there are also projects. You can go ahead, you can buy a project instead of a building, and projects are kind of long-term goals. They're going to be ways that you can score, so at the end of the game, of course, you'll have more options to win. Now, the fourth thing you can do is build a wonder. You have wonder tiles, you can build a wonder. There are all sorts of ancient wonders of the ancient world that you can go ahead and build. They, again, give you all sorts of goodies. They're good things to have, generally speaking, but they cost more the more wonders you build, the more expensive they become. Now, the fifth thing you can do is technology. Essentially, by paying the cost in ideas, you can go ahead and you can buy a technology card. This technology card, again, is going to give you various advantages and maybe some asymmetrical things you can do. Now, sixth, you can grab a tax and tariff card. Tax and tariff cards are a way that you can go ahead and essentially gain money instantly for your people, for your empire, rather, but your people aren't too happy about it, and a lot of times there's these unrest things at the bottom, and unrest cards can act like negative victory points, so they can screw with your victory points depending on the end of the game conditions, but you go ahead, you take those unrest cards, you put them in front of you, so they're there to remind you at the end of the game there's a price to pay for that money you took. Now, the seventh thing you can do is a military action. You can go ahead and you can take a military unit that's usually infantry, cavalry, or a siege engine, and instead of placing them in a specific hex, you just place them in a region. Of course, there's the different colored regions around the board, and that's going to give you more influence in that region. Now, the last thing you can do is select your type of government. There are various government tiles on the board. You can go ahead, you can take one of those tiles and add. This becomes then your government. Of course, you can only ever have one government at a time, and they kind of shift the focus of how your civilization can go to score. Now, critically, every time you take a card, you're also creating kind of a tableau, because each of these cards have different symbols on them. And these symbols on these different cards represent things like science, building, empire, military, food production, population. All these things are represented by these symbols on the cards. So essentially you're building these tableaus. And sometimes, depending on what wonders you have, or maybe what projects you have, or other factors, how many of those cards you have can determine not only scoring at the end of the game, but they can also determine if you qualify to have certain cards. So when you any time in the game you try to get a card, you can't just take a card and pay a cost. You have to make sure you have the prerequisites in that you have enough of those symbols previously in your tableau in order to take that card. As the game advances, at one point you're going to encounter from one of the decks a scoring card. As soon as you draw a scoring card, you finish the current player's turn, and then you score each of the regions. The regions are scored by influence. So essentially cities and ports and military units grant you influence in these regions. Whoever gets the highest influence, they're going to score the most points. Whoever gets the second highest influence, they'll score the second most points. So, players are going around and around. They are working, they are producing resources, they are buying building cards and projects, they're increasing their population, they are taxing, they're doing all sorts of funky things, they're building wonders, and then critically, of course, they're arriving at those scoring cards. Now, as soon as the third scoring card is revealed, you go to endgame scoring. Now, you can also trigger endgame scoring because you have the three tiles. You have the wonders, the golden ages, the achievements. If 2 of 3 of those things are completely gone, then also you go to endgame scoring. Now, when you go to endgame scoring, again, you're scoring all of your cities, you are scoring wonders, you're scoring achievements, you're scoring projects, towns, anything that you've created gives you points. Again, with those projects, you're looking at the symbols you've got on your cards and your tableau. And then, of course, you're deducting points for any unrest cards that you've got. But you go ahead, you do all of those things, you add up all of the scores, and whoever has the greatest score wins. Mosaic, a story of civilization. Now, I should point out, this is the Colossus edition. This is the big bad edition. But there is, I believe, a kind of a smaller, components-wise, edition that just has tokens. Of course, the Colossus edition has metal coins, and it has the figures, and it's a much bigger box. In fact, I would go so far as to say the Mosaic box is probably the single heaviest game box I own. It is massive. There is so much stuff there. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the game I didn't even touch on. Okay, there's a lot of subtleties and nuances, and I just didn't want to get into too much of it. I just wanted to give you the basics of the game. Now, Mosaic is a Glenn Drover design, and I've always been a fan of Glenn Drover, and I don't just say that because he once said I had a nice body. But he actually has produced some games that I have really, really enjoyed. I remember 20 years ago playing his American Civil War. I thought that was a great game. He did the Victory or Glory Napoleon, which I thought was a fun kind of area control game. Lizard Wizard. He's done a lot of these games, the Extraordinary Adventures Pirates. I really typically enjoy him because he doesn't just stick to one genre, and he doesn't kind of stick to one kind of complexity level. He kind of jumps around, and I like designers that do that rather than the ones that just keep kind of doing the same kinds of a game over and over again. I like the variety of games he does. So I had heard about this game, of course, a long time ago. I'd seen it on BGG, and it looked great, and it was one I knew sooner or later I'd get around one way or another to playing. And a while back, the good people at Forbidden Games, they reached out to me and they asked if I'd like to take a look at the game. And I said, yeah, I really would. I think that'd be great. So they go ahead and they send out a copy to me. And like I say, I went to pick it up and I think I strained my back. I didn't realize the box was that heavy. So we went over to Nate's one night, to play it the first time. We went over to Nate's. And we're playing the game, and the setup, there's some steps to the setup. Like I say you put tokens out there, but there's trade tokens, and then there's cash tokens that operate a little bit differently. And so there's a lot of real subtle things, and as we're setting it up, we're like, is this just kind of more of a bear than we're interested in? And we started playing the game. Now, I got to tell you something. Nate, there's three of us here, Nate, Mike, and I. Nate is a guy that really likes kind of Euro games and heavier Euro games, which, as you know, if you watch the channel, I'll play them once in a while, but they're not really my thing. I'm more of a Ameritrash dice rolling kind of guy, and story driven, that kind of a thing. And Mike, heaven love him, he likes them all. He's just happy to play them all. And so the three of us are sitting down with very different kinds of tastes and perceptions. And very quickly, we start playing this game, and we start like within 2 turns, that's how this system works. That's how this system works. That's how this system works. Incredibly easy game to pick up. You grok this game, like I say, certainly before 3 turns, you know what you do on your turn. You know what your options are, and the game was humming. With 3 players, it was humming. We all knew what was going on. Now, I got to tell you, I didn't do the best strategy. I fell behind. I lost this game. I came in dead last. But when the game was over, and we kind of did our post-mortem, and I'm whenever I play a game I'm reviewing, I'm always asking my buddies, what did you think? And every one of us, all 3 of us said, it blew us away. That never happens. Usually somebody really likes something, and then one of us is like, well, it was okay. But all 3 of us really liked Mosaic. Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of civilization building games. I love it. Love Civilization. I love Civilization New Dawn. I love Clash of Cultures. I love civilization building. I think it's just a fun genre to play in. It kind of goes back to when I played the computer game Civilization, right? I love that kind of a game. And this game just is freaking awesome. I know I'll get people saying, well, where does it stand? Which one do you like better? I may do a video on that at some point. Maybe. We'll see. I'm not prepared to say which game I like better at this point. I think I got to play Mosaic a little bit more. But I really, really like this game, and so did my friends. Easy to play. The setup, like I say, first time you set it up, you may be, okay, what's going on with a few things. But once you start playing it, it clicks. Everything comes together. It's easy to play. It's competitive. There's some meanness there because you both want cards. So I want that card, but I don't have the prereqs for it. And sometimes, I want this, but I can't pay for it. On this turn, I've got to work so I can pay for that next turn. And then before that next turn comes around, somebody takes the card you want. It's freaking awesome. This game it's incredibly fun. And it's got some real depth there, and yet it's got such easy mechanics and mechanisms here. I was thoroughly impressed with this game, and again, this is the Colossus edition, but I imagine I would enjoy the lighter component edition just as well, because the game is the thing, and the game here rocks. Mosaic is fantastic. Again, I'll tell you right now, this is another one I'm looking at as a contender for Game of the Year. And I'm really, really not looking forward to figuring out games this year because there have been so many great games. But I can't imagine this one not being in the top 10. and could very well end up being number one. We'll see. Fantastic game. Really love Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. Just another phenomenal civilization building game, and another great game from Forbidden Games. Recommendation, as you can probably guess here, is buy it. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today here on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we really enjoy having you stop by, seeing what we do. Please leave a comment for us here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook. We really appreciate that. And I'd ask you please to check out my other YouTube channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, military history, books on history. I'm currently uploading some of my lectures from my classes on that channel, so please check that out. Please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And please leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. We really like that as well. It helps get us more exposure out there, and we really appreciate it. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I've dated a lot, and I'm an expert in the ways of love, you might suggest. In fact, I recently wrote a book on women. In hindsight, I should have written it on paper.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Here in the 10 Drops Roastery, roasting some coffee. I'm gonna do, I think, maybe 20 pounds so that I can stay awake for your next video. But congratulations, dude. Impressive work, impressive body of work, impressive body.